Hi, storyteller here. Today I am going to explain a movie called Blind Fury. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in 1972 towards the end of the Vietnam War. The battlefield is littered with dead bodies that lay near a crashed helicopter. An American soldier, Nick Parker, seems to have survived the crash but lost his eyesight. He wades aimlessly through a thick marsh, trying to find his friend and fellow soldier, Frank Devereaux. Unfortunately, he falls into a net and is captured by the local people. A few hours later, Nick wakes up in a Vietnamese village. Instead of being in a hostile environment, he is greeted by friendly locals who treat his eyes and wounds using herbal medicines. They feed him, look after him, and a local man even takes him under his wing. When Nick's injuries heal, the local man starts training him in hand-to-hand and sword combat. Gradually, after several months of continuous training, Nick develops a keen sense of hearing. This allows him to master the art of figuring out his surroundings and intercepting approaching danger. 20 years later, Nick lives in the US as a retired veteran. He expertly uses his cane to do various tasks, and it also acts as a sheath for his sword. One afternoon at a diner, we see a group of drunk guys misbehaving with a woman. Her purse accidentally drops near Nick's leg, who is there for lunch. Since our hero cannot stand injustice, he steps forward and thrashes all the bullies using his quick reflexes. Conversely, life has not been so kind to Frank Devereaux. He married a woman named Lynn, with whom he had a son, Billy. The family initially lived a comfortable life as Frank worked as a chemical engineer in Reno, Nevada. However, he started frequenting a Las Vegas casino run by the drug lord, Kevin McCready. Soon enough, he developed a gambling addiction, which led to insurmountable debt. To pay back the money, he started working as an underground chemist for McCready, creating raw materials for drugs. He also left his wife for a waitress, Annie, who worked in the same casino. After a few years, Frank grew tired of making drugs that destroyed the lives of several people. He refused to work but was forced to continue until his debt got cleared. Currently, McCready's henchmen hang Frank upside down from the top of their casino. They threaten him to produce a large batch of designer drugs because the casino is gearing up for a massive deal down the week. When Frank refuses yet again, McCready comes up with a cunning idea: kidnap his ex-wife and son and use them to force him into working. Elsewhere, Nick arrives at Lynn's home, hoping to find his old friend there. The latter gladly invites him inside and they have a conversation over tea. Lynn reveals that she is now divorced, and Frank lives on the other end of the nation in Reno. She also claims that he hasn't been in contact for years. At that moment, a loud knock interrupts their conversation, and Lynn goes to attend the door. Two policemen then barge inside, asking to meet Billy Devereaux. They claim that the young kid is a potential eyewitness for a crime and want to talk to him. Minutes later, they are joined by a big guy named Slag, who is actually the right-hand man of McCready. Nick senses that something is off, so he interrupts the policeman and asks them for a warrant. However, before he can get a response, Slag grabs Lynn and holds her by the throat. Billy also arrives at the scene and rushes to his mother's rescue. But the big guy pushes her away and slams Billy onto a wall, knocking him unconscious. He then fatally shoots Lynn, causing her to drop to the floor. This enrages Nick so much that he quickly brings out his sword and wreaks havoc. Despite being blind, he easily finishes off the corrupt policeman with his flashy moves. He also manages to injure Slag, but the latter somehow escapes from there. Now that the danger is over, Nick rushes to check on Lynn, but it is already too late. She asks him to take care of her son, before succumbing to her injuries. Shortly after, Billy regains consciousness, and Nick tells him that they're going to Nevada to meet his father. When the young kid asks about his mother, Nick lies, saying that she is still at their home. The two then make their way to a bus station and get tickets for a long-distance journey across America. On the other hand, Frank reads about the death of his ex-wife and the disappearance of his son in the newspaper. He knows this is McCready's doing, so he reluctantly agrees to resume work. Meanwhile, Billy and Nick's journey does not get off to a good start. It is evident that the young boy does not like his travel companion and even mocks his blindness at times. That night, he tries to check Nick's wallet to see what's inside. The veteran easily catches him in the act, but lets him continue anyway. To Billy's surprise, he finds a black and white photograph of his father and Nick from their army days. This makes him curious, so he asks Nick how he lost his eyesight. In a flashback scene, Nick, Frank, and their infantry celebrate their last day in Vietnam before being sent back home. However, in the middle of their celebration, their base comes under attack by the Vietnamese rebels. They design a plan where Frank would provide cover while Nick would sneak close to the enemy line to take them out. But their idea backfires as the Vietnamese forces manage to ambush them from both sides. In the heat of the moment, Frank runs for cover, leaving Nick to fend for himself. This is when a mortar explodes nearby, sending him flying. Nick is permanently blinded by the incident, but he still doesn't hold any grudges over Frank. In the present, the duo's bus stops for breakfast at a gas station near a vast cornfield. Billy quickly runs to a public phone booth to contact his mother back home. But Nick stops him and pulls him aside to chat. He then finally confesses about his mother's death. Upon hearing this, Billy feels betrayed as he was earlier told that his mother was safe back home. Unable to bear the loss, he runs right into the cornfield. Nick does his best to follow the kid but soon loses him among the thick plants. Unfortunately, Slag and his goons have been following them, and he manages to grab Billy. He takes the kid to a makeshift hut in the middle of the field while his men try to find and kill Nick. But once again, the experienced veteran proves too much for the kidnappers. He expertly kills them one by one before making his way to the hut. Slag notices him from afar and tries to blast him using his shotgun but misses each shot. Just as he reloads his weapon, Nick sneaks under the hut and slashes one of the pillars holding its weight. The structure crumbles down, and Nick swings his sword at Slag a few times. He then grabs the boy and runs away from the cornfield. Unfortunately, Slag survives the attack as he had been wearing a protective vest underneath his shirt. The news of this failure reaches back to MacCready, who grows more and more irate by the minute. Frank has been working overtime to produce the large batch of drugs only because he thinks his son has been captured. But in reality, MacCready neither has the little kid, nor the blind man who has been creating all sorts of trouble. In the meantime, Nick and Billy miss the bus, so they spend the night by a riverside. During this, the young boy mourns the loss of his mother and cries his heart out. Nick feels very bad as well, but he cannot cry as the tear glands in his eyes were destroyed in the mortar attack. The following morning, the duo takes a lift and arrives in front of Frank's home in Reno. An emotionally distraught Billy does not want to go in because he thinks his father hates him. But Nick teaches him to forgive past mistakes and give life a chance. The two then knock on the home's front door, and Annie opens it. She warmly greets them and asks them to come in. However, as soon as Nick steps inside the house, he realizes that something's off. His intuition turns out to be correct as two of MacCready's men, Lyle and Tector, are waiting for them. Lyle swiftly knocks our hero out while Tector ties up the kid. They then load the two on the back of their van and leave with Annie. However, it is clear that Annie was forced into doing this, and she did not expect things to get violent. As the van makes its way towards Las Vegas, Nick regains his consciousness. He hears a loud noise when Tector chucks his cane out on the highway. It bounces on the asphalt and falls by the roadside, prompting the veteran to ask Billy to remember the whereabouts of the place. Springing into action, he guides Billy to grab a lighter from his back pocket. The duo then sets fire to a jute sack kept nearby, creating unbearable smoke inside the van. Annie notices them and distracts the two kidnappers until the smoke reaches the driver's cabin. Seconds later, Lyle is forced to stop the vehicle and check what's happening in the back. Using this opportunity, Nick blindsides both the attackers and knocks them down on the road. Annie then quickly grabs the steering wheel and drives towards Reno, with Nick and Billy safe in the van. Shortly after, as they stop to search for Nick's cane, Lyle and Tector regain consciousness. They immediately jack an elderly couple's car and head towards Reno. Things go from bad to worse when they hijack a local cop's police vehicle and arrive at Frank's home, just minutes after our heroes. Nick asks Annie to get Billy to safety while he distracts the attackers. The heroic woman obliges and drives towards a nearby station. Lyle and Tector break into Frank's home, assuming that the blind man and the kid would be hiding inside. However, the house is rigged with several traps, such as small-sized mines, firecrackers, and even bear traps. The wacky things stun both the goons as they continue their search. Unfortunately, Tector gets stuck in a bear trap and Lyle decides to take him to the hospital instead of finishing their job. The duo then takes the elderly couple's car and speeds away from Reno. Meanwhile, Nick gets a phone call from MacCready's henchman, Corky, who informs him that Frank is currently being held at the casino. He also asks the veteran to bring Billy and come to them, or else Frank will be killed. Nick sees through this plan but keeps quiet. He grabs the car keys and asks Billy to hop in as they head to Las Vegas. The climax of the movie takes place at the casino where Frank has just finished creating a large batch of drugs. The moment MacCready gets his drugs, he orders Slag to kill him off for good. But the henchman goes against the order because he wants to use Frank as bait. His decision proves to be useful as Nick and Billy arrive at the scene. While Nick takes the stairs to the upper floor, Billy is taken hostage by Corky. The latter wants to kill the little boy right then and there, but Annie bravely steps forward and knocks him out with a baseball bat. She then grabs Billy's hand and runs out of the casino, where she calls for backup. On the other hand, Nick approaches Frank, who is being held at gunpoint by Slag. Despite being unarmed, he manages to blindside the villain and tosses him down the casino stairs. He then cuts Frank's bindings and the two head towards the basement. Here, they finally have a heartfelt conversation and mend their strained relationship. Unfortunately, their escape is hindered by MacCready, who holds Billy hostage. He forces Nick to surrender his sword before ordering his men to open fire. However, the veteran is one step ahead and quickly grabs his sword back. He then intercepts every bullet fired at him before swinging the sword at the enemies. He finishes MacCready's goons with ease, but Slag suddenly approaches him from the back. To make matters worse, Slag is holding a loaded shotgun, and he shoots Nick at point-blank range. The veteran falls to the ground, but Frank intervenes and shoots Slag with his pistol. The big guy takes a few steps back, allowing Nick to spring up and decapitate him. Despite being shot, Nick continues to fight until the last of MacCready's men is dead. He then falls to the ground, and it seems as if he is going to die. However, the veteran uses his willpower and stands back up. He is then escorted outside by Frank and Billy. The movie ends with a father-son reunion as Nick bids goodbye to the two and leaves. The moral of the story is, the ones who mind don't matter, and the ones who matter don't mind.